In this presentation, I'll be talking about gardening for the environment. The planet needs our help, and there are things we can all do in our gardens that can improve the quality of soil and water and combat climate change. Natural resources like soil, water, and air are vital to our well-being. The earth provides us with so much and provides vital services to us that we can easily take for granted. As our human population grows, there are many ways that we are indirectly harming soil, water, and air through our overuse or misuse of these natural resources. Luckily, as gardeners, we are in direct relationship with our environment, and we know that the amount of love and attention we give to our plants is rewarded back to us in the form of food. I'll be talking about 4 environmental concerns that gardeners can address through their gardening practices. And lucky for us, those same practices will benefit you with a healthier and more abundant garden. We'll discuss climate change, water pollution, insect diversity, and water scarcity, and how these environmental issues impact all of us living on the planet. Then we'll go into the different ways you can improve the environment through environmentally friendly gardening practices. We're going to start with climate change. Over the years, this topic has been gaining more attention. Let's talk a little bit about what climate change means and why so many scientists are worried about it. So what is climate change? Earth's atmosphere works like a greenhouse. The sun's heat can go through the atmosphere and provides the heat we need on Earth. Some heat is absorbed by the Earth and some is reflected by the Earth and goes back into space. And then some heat is trapped in the atmosphere by greenhouse gases. These gases stay in the atmosphere and hold on to heat. Greenhouse gases are released through various human activities. Methane is released through livestock manure and carbon dioxide is released through the burning of fossil fuels like coal and natural gas. Burning of trees or deforestation also releases stored carbon out of the earth and into the atmosphere. Wastewater treatment and other industrial processes release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The consequences of this extra heat being held in the atmosphere is that the entire Earth starts to warm. Even a small increase in overall temperature can change the climate all over the world. This doesn't just mean that temperatures will be warmer. Changes in the temperature create changes in precipitation and weather patterns that cause all kinds of changes in the climate that we are used to. Increased average temperatures are something that we are experiencing all over the world. But another impact of climate change is an increase in the amount of extreme weather events, like floods, droughts, and fires. In Michigan specifically, we are seeing record high water levels in the Great Lakes, and in 2013 we experienced record low water levels. This seesaw of one extreme to the next is expected to continue. As Michiganders, our economy, recreation, and water supply all depend on the Great Lakes. Climate change will also impact our very diverse agricultural industry, and more flooding and droughts will cause crop loss. The good news is that we have ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and ways to store one of the major contributing greenhouse gases, which is carbon. Trees and soil pull carbon out of the atmosphere and stores it. This is called carbon sequestration. For this to work, soil needs to be healthy and able to support plants, roots, and soil organisms that make this possible. Much of our soil has been disturbed and degraded over time, and it lacks the texture and components that makes soil a fertile space for plants and other organisms to thrive. This is where gardeners come in. By improving the health of your soil, you will not only improve your garden outcomes, but you'll create a carbon sink. Improving your soil has many benefits that will make your garden a thriving ecosystem. Improving your soil will improve plant health and yields while sequestering carbon. The soil will be able to support beneficial insects and improve variety of plants and animals. When your soil is healthy, it has a texture that acts as glue, reducing soil erosion and holding the right amount of water while still allowing proper drainage. All of these benefits translate into a healthier place to live with improved air and water quality. So what can we do to improve the soil in our gardens? Organic matter is something you'll hear a lot about from experts in soil health. Organic matter is plant and animal materials in various stages of breaking down. The word organic matter also includes the microorganisms that help break down the plants and animal material. The first picture on the left shows the entire cycle of a flower. For our purposes, we'll start at the picture that says growth. A seed is planted, and with sun and water it starts to grow. It grows larger and flowers, and once it has reached its peak maturity, it slowly starts to die. The leaves and flowers of this plant will eventually fall into the soil and start to break down or decompose. The soil organisms help break down the plant materials and transforms them into nutrients. These nutrients are used by other plants to grow and reach maturity and then continue the cycle of dying and decomposing. The picture on the right shows how within the roots of the plants that we see above ground is organic matter. And within the organic matter are all kinds of creatures that are working to break down the decomposing material into usable nutrients for plants. Now that we know what organic matter is and how it can be used to improve the quality of our soil, how do we add more of this to our gardens? One way is mulching. When we think of mulch, we mostly think of wood chips that you get from the landscaping store. But there are many ways to mulch, and it has many benefits for your vegetable garden. By adding 2 to 3 inches of mulch on top of the soil in your garden, you will start to feed your soil organisms. Mulch in any form will start to decompose, creating available nutrients for your plants. Mulch also keeps weeds down, so you'll spend less time weeding, and it also conserves water. When bare soil is exposed and the hot sun is beating down on it, more water evaporates, drying out your soil faster. Seeds and plants like the soil warm, and mulch can hold in the heat but also keep it from getting too hot. Lastly, it prevents the soil on top from wearing or washing away in the rain and wind, reducing soil erosion. There are great ways to add mulch to your garden that will provide organic matter. Plant materials from your yard can be used without having to go out and buy mulch. In the fall, when you are raking leaves, you can add the dead leaves and pine needles on top of your garden bed. They'll break down some over the winter, and in the spring it can stay in your garden and continue to break down while also creating that barrier as mulch. Straw is another great option for mulch during the growing season. It is less expensive than other mulches you might buy at the store, and it provides nutrients to the soil all season as it breaks down. Another way to add organic matter to your garden is by adding green mulch. Green mulch is when you add plant materials that just got cut or pulled so they are still green, compared to brown materials like leaves, straw, and needles, like I just mentioned before. Grass clippings are another easy way to use materials from your yard to add organic matter. After cutting the grass, you can rake it up or use an attachment on your lawnmower to collect grass clippings and pour it on top of your garden. You can also mix pulled weeds into your soil as you are weeding. As long as the weeds have not gone to seed, they can be left in your soil. If a weed has flowered and then moved to dropping its seeds, you'll end up planting these seeds in your garden and getting more weeds. If you think of how a dandelion grows a yellow flower and then turns all white and fluffy with seeds, you wouldn't want to add that fluffy white seeds into your garden. But if the dandelion that has not flowered yet, or it is still in the yellow flower phase, you can pull it and mix it into the soil and allow it to break down and add organic matter. Another way to add green manure is by planting a cover crop in the fall. The image on the right is crimson clover, which is a common cover crop. It can be planted in the fall, and then in the spring it'll pop up and flower, and right as it flowers you can cut it down or pull it and mix it into the top of your soil. Compost is another way to add organic matter to your garden. Compost is organic matter that has already started the process of decomposing. It is made by piling green and brown materials, such as the ones we have discussed, adding some water and allowing the sun to heat the pile to encourage the breakdown of materials. By mixing different materials, it provides a variety of important nutrients to your soil at the appropriate ratio. You can think of green materials as wet materials, like grass clippings, weeds, and food scraps. These materials provide nitrogen to your soil. Brown materials are dried and provide carbon to your soil. Leaves, straw, paper, sawdust, and wood chips can all be used as brown materials. To use compost in your garden, you'll use it similarly as a mulch by adding 2 to 3 inches on top of your garden soil at the beginning of the season. You can buy compost at a gardening center, just make sure what you buy has a light, fluffy feel to it. If you already compost at home, you'll just wait until your compost pile becomes a dark, light soil with a mixture of small and large particles. Making your own compost pile at home is a great way to make use out of the abundance of materials we already have in our yards and our homes. But it does take time and energy to properly manage the pile. There are a lot of great sources that can give you step-by-step guides to starting a compost pile, and there is a variety of ways to do it. The basics to starting a pile is to start piling brown and green material somewhere in your yard that is not too sunny and is convenient for you to get to. You need to keep a balance of green and brown materials by adding 3 parts brown for every 1 part green. The pile also needs air and moisture. Checking in on your compost and adding water if it is too dry, or turning if it needs more air, is an important part of composting. Finding a step-by-step composting guide from a trusted source is the best way to learn about composting and how to start a pile properly. Adding organic matter to improve soil quality is a great way to help reduce the amount of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, and it has endless benefits for your garden. Besides adding organic matter, there's another component to healthy soil, which is leaving your soil undisturbed. Tilling is a common practice for gardeners and it comes with its benefits, but to truly build healthy soil over time and to allow organic matter to accumulate, it is best to continue adding organic matter to the top of your soil to create many layers. When you till in order to mix organic matter 6 to 8 inches into the ground, it ends up disturbing the structure and organisms that are already working to create the soil that plants need. Many farmers have already started to use no-till methods to reduce soil erosion and improve soil fertility. Disturbing the soil often leads to more erosion and a breakdown of organisms that live in the soil, and the healthy composition that holds water and carbon. Farmers and gardeners like to till to warm and aerate the soil, and to mix organic matter deep into the soil. It is also preferred because it keeps weeds down. Unfortunately, doing this over the long term degrades the soil, reducing its ability to hold water and build up organic matter, while also destroying beneficial insects and microbes living in the soil. Your garden can be just as healthy without tilling. What is more important is that you work to improve your soil over the long term by adding organic matter to the surface each year and use mulch to suppress weeds. Climate change is something we should all be aware of, and it's already impacting Michigan. Soil is such an important part of the equation, and as gardeners, there are simple practices we can incorporate into our garden that can have a lasting impact on our climate. Here's a quick summary on climate change and the actions that help improve soil. The release of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere is changing the climate and impacts everyone on Earth. Healthy soil absorbs and stores carbon, removing it from our atmosphere. The easiest way to improve your garden soil is to keep adding organic matter year after year. Mulches decay throughout the season, adding organic matter, suppressing weeds, and holding in more water. Leaves, straw, grass clippings, cover crops, and compost are all forms of organic matter. And do not disturb your soil. Water pollution is another environmental challenge we are facing that doesn't get as much media attention as climate change. The use of fertilizers in farming and gardening has started to show up in our water. We use fertilizers in farming and gardening to help our plants reach the highest yields possible. Fertilizer is an important part of farming, and it supports the diverse crops grown in Michigan and in our gardens. Unfortunately, fertilizers are used in place of improving soil and are applied in quantities that our plants can't use all at once. When these extra nutrients are unused by plants, they get washed away into our water supply when it rains or plants are watered. This is called runoff. They make their way into lakes and rivers and allows overgrowth of algae and other aquatic organisms. Too much algae blocks out light and uses up all the oxygen, harming other fish. It can also make our drinking water unsafe. In our gardens, there are ways to reduce the risk of fertilizer runoff. First, let's talk about the different types of fertilizers. When we talk about overuse of fertilizers, we are usually talking about synthetic fertilizers. These are a mix of nutrients that are immediately ready for your plant to take up. The plant uses what it needs, and the rest of the nutrients are left in the soil and washes away as soon as rain or irrigation enters the soil. Synthetic fertilizers only feed the plants, not the soil. Organic fertilizers feed the organisms in the soil. They are not immediately available to plants. Organic fertilizers are meant to feed your soil, which will then feed your plants. The nutrients are also not sitting unused in the soil. They need to be broken down first. This can reduce the amount of nutrients that are washed away when the rain comes. Organic fertilizers can still contribute to runoff if not used properly. And manure is considered organic, but if it is not broken down correctly, it also contributes to runoff. The best way to provide nutrients to your plants is to improve your soil with organic matter, just as we discussed earlier. But if your soil is in bad shape, it will take some time to get to the point where fertilizer isn't necessary. So using fertilizer correctly and using organic fertilizers that will help your soil can help reduce the risk of runoff. So how can you reduce fertilizer runoff? By improving your soil as discussed in the climate change section, you'll be less dependent on fertilizing. When you do use fertilizer, use it correctly by only using what you need to reduce runoff. Organic fertilizers can also be overused. So focus on improving soil and reducing fertilizer over time. When you are using fertilizer, take the time and attention to choose the right product and use it correctly. One way to do this is to test your soil so you know exactly what your soil needs. It may not be as bad as you think, and just a few little tweaks can be made to improve the quality of your plants. Read the directions on your fertilizer and apply according to directions. Ask for help if needed, and use resources from Michigan State Extension to learn how to use it properly. Do not fertilize when it is rainy or windy. Keep an eye on the weather and use at a time where it won't be washed away before plants can use it. Once you fertilize, don't overwater your garden or pots. Make sure the soil is moist, but don't let it get too full of water. Using fertilizer can contribute to water pollution, and as Michiganders, we have a lot of pride and integrity in our Great Lakes and the natural beauty in our state. Unused nutrients from fertilizers can be washed into our water sources and cause many problems for fish, insects, and plants that live there, as well as to humans drinking it. To reduce our impact on water, we can improve our soil over time. Use fertilizers correctly and opt for organic fertilizers if appropriate, and get a soil test to make sure we aren't using what we don't need. Insects are so important for growing food and keeping our planet healthy and in balance. The use of pesticides can harm insects that we need while trying to get rid of the ones that are causing harm. Beneficial insects are insects that offer benefits to humans by pollinating food crops or managing unwanted pests. Pollinators are the ones we hear the most about. They move pollen from one plant to another, which is necessary for plants to produce fruits or flowers. Insects that are pests can cause a lot of problems for farmers and gardeners, and can completely devastate crop yields if not managed. One method of management is the use of pesticides. The problem with commonly used pesticides is that they are broad spectrum, meaning they kill any insect that comes in contact with it, not just the unwanted pest. This can cause a reduction in the beneficial insects that kill pests, which can lead to even more pest problems, and causing an imbalance in our ecosystems. Another concern is that our insects can develop a resistance to pesticides over time, making them useless. Pesticides are a major concern for pollinators because they move long distances and land on so many different plants. We have seen a decline in honeybee populations and other pollinators. Many pesticides are sprayed, making them harder to control. It can be in the air, on other plants, and in the water, and also spread by the wind. Flowers with pesticides directly on them will have contaminated pollen that bees will pick up, move to other plants, and bring back to their hives. Pesticides can't always be avoided, but by using integrated pest management, you can manage pests in multiple ways so that pesticides are the last resort. Integrated pest management methods can vary, but the overall idea is to start by using prevention methods, checking for pests often, and properly identifying a pest before taking any action, and then using pesticides as a last resort, together with other prevention methods. Here is one example of integrated pest management from the Entomological Society of America. They focus on using knowledge of insect life cycles and behaviors and using many different tools to manage a pest problem. They start by identifying the problem and then evaluate to see if it needs action. They use prevention methods, take action if needed, and then monitor the problem to decide if the action is working or if another method needs to be used. Some tools include altering the environment, adding beneficial insects, choosing pest-resistant varieties, disrupting the insect's development and behaviors, and using pesticides. Prevention is the best way to deal with pests. Doing everything you can to reduce the need for other interventions will save you time and headaches. Some prevention methods include keeping your plants healthy by removing dead leaves and getting rid of chronically unhealthy plants. These will attract pests. Again, improving soil with organic matter will help reduce pests as it keeps your plants healthier and supports a habitat for beneficial insects and organisms. Make sure to keep up on weeding. Weeds can attract pests. And attract beneficial insects by planting attractive plants around your vegetable garden. This is a table from the USDA that shows some beneficial insects, who they attack, and how to attract them. One way to attract beneficial insects is to have a permanent planting of strongly scented flowers near your garden, and also to plant some annuals in your garden. These include butterfly weed, fennel, flowered broccoli, and bee balm. Some annuals to keep in your garden are marigolds and dill. Planting marigolds in your garden is a popular method for pest control among gardeners. In the table, you'll see that assassin bugs are generalists and can be beneficial for many pests. They can be attracted by a permanent planting nearby that creates a shelter. Bees and butterflies are great to have around for pollination and can be attracted with milkweed, asters, and other attractive flowers. Braconid wasps go after many large caterpillar types of insects and are attracted by nectar plants. Damsel bugs go after some smaller insects like thrips and aphids, as well as caterpillars. And the ground beetle can get rid of slugs and snails and can be attracted with tall grasses and shelter plantings. Crop rotation is another way to prevent pests. Many pests go after specific families of vegetables. If you continue to plant the same families in the same spot, you will build up a great habitat for that pest. By moving where you plant each vegetable from year to year, you are playing hide and seek with pests, making it harder for them to establish. It also helps improve soil quality by decreasing erosion and nutrient loss. Here's a simple example of crop rotation. Imagine this as 2 raised beds. This year you planted broccoli, kale, and cauliflower in one bed on the left. These belong to the cabbage family. In the bed on the right, you planted tomatoes and eggplant, which both are in the nightshade family. So the following year, you can switch where you planted each family. This will keep pests that like the cabbage family from building up in the garden bed, as well as keeping pests that like the nightshade family from building up in the other bed. Physical barriers like this netting in the picture is another way to prevent insects from damaging your plants. This creates a barrier that deters pests and can give you the peace of mind knowing that your plants are less vulnerable. After prevention, an important part of integrated pest management is observing and identifying the problem. Sometimes you might see some chew marks on a plant and worry that something is going to eat your whole plant. But after monitoring it for a few days, it doesn't seem to get that bad. You occasionally see a caterpillar or a slug on it and pick it off when necessary. This is a way to observe the problem and identify the pest without jumping to conclusions or using unnecessary pesticides. You'll want to check closely for pests often, so that you can spot a problem before it gets too bad. A few chew marks are fine and won't hurt your plants, and you can still eat your vegetables. But if something is eating and ruining your whole crop, you'll need to take action. There's also help when it comes to deciding if you have a problem that needs action, or if you can't figure out what the pest is. There are pest identifying apps where you can take pictures or ask questions. You can also contact a Michigan State University Extension agent by calling the gardening hotline on the number on the screen, or use their Ask an Expert page. This way you can describe the problem you're having and can discuss the correct options for controlling it. Once you have observed and identified the pest, now it is time to decide which action you will take. In a smaller garden that many of us have at home, picking off large insects like slugs and caterpillars is an effective management technique that avoids the use of pesticides and the possibility of harming good insects that are helping you out. Smaller insects that are causing damage but that cannot be seen will need to be dealt with by using an insecticidal soap. Insecticidal soaps are a pesticide option that has less of an impact on beneficial insects and can be effective in a home garden. Insecticidal soaps work on smaller, soft-bodied insects by removing their waxy outer layer of skin, causing them to dry up and die. Some insecticidal soaps have Bt, which is a naturally derived microorganism that is toxic to insects. When choosing an insecticidal soap, buy one that is OMRI certified. This means that it has been reviewed by the Organic Material Review Institute as an organic product. Insecticidal soaps can be applied directly to the affected plant, so you don't have to apply it to the whole garden. Insect diversity is vital to our farms and gardens. When dealing with pests, we can take the integrated pest management approach and use many methods and preventions before using pesticides. Let's summarize insect diversity. Broad-spectrum pesticides can kill beneficial insects and pollinators. Prevent pests by keeping your garden free from weeds, remove infested or unhealthy plants, and improve your soil. Plant flowers and strong-scented plants near garden to attract beneficial insects. Use crop rotation. Observe and identify pests correctly before taking action. Use chemical pesticides only as a last resort and use them according to directions. And insecticidal soap is a less harmful option for soft-bodied insects. Lastly, we'll talk about how we can be mindful of how much water we are using in our gardens. Water scarcity is a side effect of climate change and is already impacting water supply across the world. It might seem silly to talk about water scarcity in Michigan. We are lucky to be surrounded by water in every direction and enjoy all of its benefits. The Great Lakes hold 21% of the world's fresh water. Most water on Earth is salt water and is undrinkable. So if you think about it, we are responsible for 21% of the Earth's drinkable water. As our climate changes, we need to use our natural resources with more care. Water is a non-renewable resource, and we can use it up too quickly. Although we are experiencing record high water levels, it wasn't too long ago that we were experiencing record low water levels and drought. So let's talk about a few ways we can waste less water and use water more mindfully in our gardens. Let's talk about some ways you can save water in your garden. By watering in the afternoon or evening, you will allow water to sink into the soil before it is evaporated off of the surface during the hot parts of the day. Something else to keep in mind is that plants need more water when they are small and their roots are at the surface of the soil. As they mature and their roots grow deeper, they can be watered less frequently because they aren't dependent on that easily evaporated water on the soil surface. As we discussed earlier, the use of mulch in your garden can help hold water in the soil for longer. If you have potted vegetables, you can use self-watering pots or self-watering globes, which are the image on the right. You fill them with water, stick them in the pots, and as the pots lose water, the soil will suck water from the globe, keeping the soil moist at all times. You can even make your own out of plastic water bottles, which is a great way to reuse plastic instead of throwing it away. Another water-saving idea is to recycle water. If you filled up a little pool for your kids or a bowl for your dogs, you can pour the extra water into your garden or pots instead of dumping it. And lastly, planting native plants and gardens in your yard and around the house can help hold water in the soil, so that less will sit on top of the lawn and run off into other parts of the yard. We've discussed a lot of topics, and sometimes learning about environmental problems can make us feel overwhelmed, guilty, or helpless. But by making small changes and modifying how we care for our gardens, we can improve the small part of the earth that we are responsible for. It also helps that many of these changes will make us better gardeners and improve our garden's output. To start, choose one environmental goal to incorporate into your garden. Don't try to change everything all at once. Focus on improving your garden over the long term. Improving soil can take years, so just work on small steps each season. And as I have continuously gone back to in this presentation, soil is so important. By focusing on improving our soil, we can touch on each environmental issue we discussed. We can sequester carbon, reduce pests, and save water. And just remember that no action is too small.